Good morning, Coldwell Banker George Realty. We're really happy to see you all here in the room and on Zoom. Peter, Cam, and I are here to answer all your questions. This will be somewhat of a review. We went quickly over open house protocol and forms, but we're going to be doing it in a little more detail today. I know that some of you have gone to some of the training that's been offered. And I was just telling an agent in the room because he went to a very extensive one in Pomona.
Pomona, double tree.
If you have something to add or I missed something, I'm really happy for you to let us know or correct or anything that you feel that you need to let us know. Go ahead and do that. We're all learning together. And so we're going to start with the open house form. So when you in the prior to this new law, we were using our own sign-in books at the open house. So now we want to use the CAR provided form, which is an open house visitor, and it also is a non-disclosure non-agency disclosure advisory. So you'll want to print quite a few of these, fill out the top. Who's the real estate agent and who's the broker? Coldwell Banker George Realty in your name. Okay, so we don't allow brokers outside of our brokerage to run our open houses. You may have somebody in Coldwell Banker George Realty run your open house. So this will work for any agent and our agents, in our brokerage. So within our brokerage, we, we're having a lot of calls come in. I get them daily of agents wanting to run our open houses that are outside of our family of Coldwell Banker George Realty. So because of our insurance and all of that, we don't want that to happen, okay? Or authorize it, correct, Peter?
Right.
We don't authorize it, Peter said. So, okay. So visitor intention to view the property, the agent's holding the open house, or they could be conducting a virtual tour of the property. The visitor is interested in viewing the property and the agent shows the property on the following terms that they do not represent the visitor, excuse me. Communication with this agent at the open house is for the benefit of the seller. Communication with the agent is not confidential. If the visitor wants to write an offer on the property through the agent, at that time, the agent will disclose if the agent and the agent's broker represent the seller exclusively or both the buyer and seller. So if you want to write an offer, you must have a BRBC. That's the long form, but they've had a short form, which is the PSRIA. I'm going to show you. That's only good for 30 days. It's non-exclusive. So that will cover you on 3 properties that you want to show. Let's say you saw 3 hot properties you thought they would like, you want to show them, and they don't want to commit to you for longer term, 90 days exclusive, then you have the shorter form you can use. But it is non-exclusive. It's only for 30 days.
The PSRA, right?
The PSRA, that is a 30-day agreement, okay? So make sure you have ample forms here printed when you go of this page for your open house. Put it on a clipboard or however you want to handle it. We're also going to recommend, this is the shorter agreement. This is the 30-day one. Please have a bunch of these printed at your open house and also the longer one in case somebody wants to engage with you in a longer agreement to find them a property. So this is a property showing and representation agreement. It is non-exclusive. So you're going to fill this out, whoever the buyer is, the brokerage. Here it's limited to 3 properties on this form. So you fill out the property addresses. This would be if you're running somebody on a weekend, you're going to open houses with them, or you found 3 properties you think they'd like, but they don't want to commit to you yet because they don't know how wonderful you are. So you have 30 days to show them how wonderful you are or get them into escrow. So you'll see right here, this representation period does not exceed 30 days. It is non-exclusive. So if you can get them on the BRBC, if they see, want to sign up for longer, I would suggest that one. But maybe at an open house, people wouldn't want to do that till they know you a little more. So broker compensation is not fixed by law. They say this on all of the forms here. So B1 is the amount of the compensation. So what is the amount of the compensation for yourself representing this buyer? So you put that here, or you check the box for dollars, okay? So generally, it's going to be a percentage of the acquisition price, as they say. Payments received by broker from seller. If the broker receives compensation, if the buyer's agent gets paid by the seller or others, then it is subtracted off whatever the buyer would have owed you, or it's, wiped clean if they get you put 3% and the seller paid 3%. So you don't get more than the agreement. You cannot charge 3% if you only asked for 2 on the SPBV when you write your offer. So just be very mindful of that. Put in the compensation that you would like to ask the seller for. And if the seller doesn't pay it on this particular one, then that would be up to the buyer. You see, this is very short, and there's no, the BRBC, the longer one, I don't have the funds. There's no box like this on the shorter one, because I was reading that this morning, hey, I don't see that box. I don't see anything about that. So this might be a really good form for you to consider, okay, at your open houses. Or even if you just met somebody and you say, I could show you 3 houses. I think I have some in mind. You could use it with that type of prospect too. They'll get to know you, then they'll want to engage longer. Okay. So I'm going to stop right there. Are there any comments on this form or questions before we move on? Did anybody have anything to share from any trainings they went to? Okay, then I'm going to continue on.
Can I ask a question on the first form, the OHA?
Yes.
I just want to, I think I know the answer because we've covered it before, but I just want to make sure that it's still the same. If a person, we give this to the first form, if a person doesn't want to sign, we have a choice of telling them, okay, but we're not saying anything to you.
Right.
We're just giving you the flyer. That's it, right?
If a person, the question in the room is, what if a prospective buyer, not other family members, but the actual buyer doesn't want to sign this, then what so at that point, give them the flyer, but don't give them information, a lot of information, right?
This is just a disclosure form, the visitor doesn't have to sign it.
Yeah, you can't force anybody. Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
from the class,
Talk loud
Barbara
though.
Betts, they said all they have to do is just print their name.
Yeah.
Just print their name. And you just give it to them, and that's it.
Okay, so the gentleman that went down to a very multi-hour class said they can just print their name on it and you can give them a copy so they know what they signed. That's why you have to have a lot of these with you.
Yeah.
Okay,
A lot of them.
so, you may want to go in with
Treat
50
them as
copies.
much as you have
Yeah,
desires.
yeah. So property showing and representation agreement, we went over. That's the shorter buyer representation that is non-exclusive 30 days, okay? So the cancellation notice on non-exclusive, remember, on both of them is effective upon receipt, or if you click the days, you might want to say 5 days after receipt or whatever. But remember, they do have cancellation rights even inside of the 30 days. And the same goes with the BRBC. They have cancellation rights. Okay. So here's your non-agency agreement. So you see this box here, and I had to Google it because I don't really deal with leasehold interest. This form is being provided in connection with a leasehold interest, which means a lease of land or
No, anything, any land property, whatever.
And it's usually long,
Anything.
very long leases, right?
Oh, doesn't have to be very long lease, any lease.
Okay, so Peter said any lease that you have running with the property, they you can provide this, like if they were, I guess, creating a leasehold interest on the property. So I do know somebody that has that on their building, but I didn't really ever ask them why, but okay, so parties to the property, the seller is the owner of the property. You're gonna fill all this in. The buyer has made or is contemplating making an offer on the property. Okay, you notice this can be used for leases too, of course. And the seller is seller or landlord's broker, excuse me, the representative of the seller or the landlord's broker is a California real estate licensee. Or if checked, there's another broker that's a California licensee. No representation of the buyer by seller's broker. So it's saying here that the broker is not going to represent that buyer. That's for buyers that tell you, I don't want you representing me, but I'm going to make an offer and I don't want you to represent me. And then you say, is another agent representing you? No. Make sure that they fill out this form, because if you give them blank contracts, you want to make sure you have this form filled out, okay? Now, did you hear anything? I heard you can give them blank contract.
Yeah.
Yes, so yes, he heard the same thing, because I've been at multiple trainings. If it's an unrepresented buyer, because you're working on behalf of the seller, you may print the car offer for them, let them take it to their lawyer, whoever they're gonna seek legal advice from, and fill it out themselves, because you're not representing them, okay? But you may provide them with the forms, because you're doing that on behalf of the seller, okay? So representation of buyer by others. The buyer is represented by other brokers. Any questions that the buyer may have regarding the scope of the representation should be directed to another broker. I'm not sure why we would use this form if we know there's another agent, but if they're asking you a lot of questions, you may want to have this form filled out. Tell them to direct those questions, because I've been in open houses where a buyer is clearly stating to me, no, I have an agent. Well, stop trying to get positioning from me, which I wouldn't give you anyway. So we have to be really careful, because we need to have our fiduciary with our seller. Buyer is not at this time represented by another broker, but they have the right later, if they wish, to enter into a agency relationship with a real estate licensee other than the seller's broker. So this form is like, I am not representing you, I'm representing the seller. So any discussions or forms you're providing are on behalf of the seller. So we don't want to get into a trap or box ourselves in with an unrepresented buyer later claiming that we were really representing them. So we will require this form. If you are dealing with an unrepresented buyer, of course you can send the disclosures on behalf of the seller that need to be sent for this deal. But make sure this form is in place, because we don't want to claim later that you were representing them when you're not. The way to prove you're not is to have this form executed. So tenant representation, I went over this already once, but it's just because I, was flat-footed one day in here on that. Make sure you understand, if you're representing a residential tenant, make sure you have this filled out for the compensation. If you're doing listings for commercial, we highly recommend that you now begin to use the AIR listing forms if you are listing properties for lease or for sale, because it's not going to have things with the compensation in there like the car forms will. So if you are a commercial agent, we recommend that you use the listing agreements provided for in AIR. You can buy that annually through CAR. and use it as many times as you like for about $239 a year. It's a good deal, okay?
And if you're using the AI form, then don't mismatch with the platform.
Yeah, we
Because
see
is-
that a lot. Yeah, if Peter has a good point, if you're using AIR, stick strictly to AIR forms. Don't start mixing and matching car disclosures or any other contractual items with the AIR. Go AIR all the way. AIR does provide for the required mandatory disclosures. They have those in that suite that you can buy. It's a complete set of documents. Okay, so this, I just let the listing agreement populate as it does. So of course the agency comes up on it because we're getting questions on the listing agreement. So we'll briefly go over the grid. So of course the agency is going to populate with it. So this is the residential listing agreement, exclusive right to sell. This is the new revised one. So we're gonna, this will all look familiar to you. The seller, the broker, date prepared, address of the property, city and county, assessor's parcel number. So the terms of the listing agreement are contained in the grid, and it's a 7-page document. So they're saying the seller should read all 7 pages. So here we go with the listing period. So listing period begins on the date and ends on a date. Not to exceed, your listing periods cannot exceed 24 months unless you are a corporation, LLC, or partnership. Okay, this is for individuals, and I believe trusts are included in that. But if you're an LLC, corporation, or partnership, the 24-month does not apply. Listing price. This is really easy to miss. Actually, I filled out one of the contracts the other night and then I re-reviewed it as I always do. I went, oh my God, I didn't put the listing price. Super easy to miss because it's so skinny.
It is.
So it's too
Easy to
skinny.
overlook, yeah.
So I overlooked it, but I always pre-print and go over everything with a highlighter. So make sure you don't miss that because it's so skinny. So property specific listings, if it's manufactured mobile home, probate, conservatorship, guardianship, if you check one of these boxes, another form will populate for you. So here, there's a big old note to the seller that commission is not fixed by law. It's all negotiable. The broker's commission advisory will attach to this package. You'll see it as I scroll through. Okay, so here's where things are a little bit new for us. Compensation to seller's broker. Only the seller's side of the transaction. Whatever you put here is only for the listing agent. Okay, percent above is based on the purchase price if seller and buyer sign a purchase agreement. So this is only for you. Don't try to, sneak in for the buyer's agent. Let the buyer's agent do their work. Even if you're going to be dual, you can also submit with your offer. First, you get the buyer's agreement, right? We always start with that, even if we're dueling on our own listing. You're going to have a written buyer's agreement. You're going to submit the offer with the SPBB box and G3 on the offer checked and the form in, and then you will negotiate the commission with the seller for the buyer's side. So going back to that, when you are talking to your seller, we don't want to shock any seller. As I've said, we want to make sure they understand that buyers are going to come in with their offers and they're going to ask for compensation. I would say unless, somebody is like, I got to have that property and they're not going to ask for compensation. Maybe they're an investor and they'll pay the agent themselves. That could happen. And I've seen it happen on apartment buildings where they just want to win. But make sure you're having the conversation with the seller that they understand that probably the agents will be asking for commission. It'll come in on the offer. So they need to be mentally prepped for that. They can either accept what the agent asked, what the buyer's agent asked for in the offer. They can negotiate the percentage or the flat fee, or they can reject it. They have 3 ways to go. That is the seller's decision, okay?
I have questions on that. So that negotiation, is that being done separate from the, offer? Or is that being done, together as a package? Say, for example, you have a hot house, you get 10 offers and, and then, you know, you're getting a separate one, you know, you're getting the, agents asking for a commission and you're getting their offer. When the seller responds, are they responding on 2 separate forms, one for the commission, from the seller?
Mm-mm.
Or is it all gonna be on the counter?
It'll all be on the counter, but, if you're countering that SPBB, be very careful and make it very clear. As I've said probably multiple times, I take a black marker, I void it, I strike through it, I put void. And then on the counter, I check the box for the SPP dated, whatever that date is of that new one, and I make sure they understand it's a replacement, that no, we're not paying you 5% or 3% or whatever they're asking. Here's a counter from the seller. I've included that form. I check the box. I annotate the form, car form number, and the date of that form, because I want the lineup to be very clear. So however you need to make it clear, make it clear. And of course, you would not have a seller sign an SPBB that they don't agree to. So it would not be signed, right? You would be replacing it with a new SPB. And I would also go as far as to say, as you know, buyer to return signed counteroffer with SPBB. You know, make sure they understand, no, you don't just get to sign one, because I've had that happen. You better return both of them or we're not gonna, you know, we can't respond anymore. You need to make sure everything comes back. Whatever you've attached that somebody needs to sign needs to come back with your counter, you know? So, or I just make a call, you didn't send back the signed attachment, send it please. Yeah.
Can you show us, we have a chance, what's that area that you say that you,
G3, yeah, I'll show you. Okay,
Is it G3D?
yeah, it's G3 on the, I don't know if it's B, but I'll show you, I'll pull it up.
I feel like that's what they kept saying, G3D, refer to G.
Yeah, I think it's the.
Yeah. So additional compensation is, you can check it or not. It does not apply to dual agency. If the agent represents the buyer and seller, the buyer side compensation is specified in a separate written agreement, which means it's a SPVB. If you check this box, you need to negotiate with the seller up front. If they will pay you for an unrepresented buyer, because you will be doing some work, like you're gonna be opening the doors. You can't leave that buyer in the house, you know, with their inspector. I would probably sit out front and give them privacy, but I would be there. So you're gonna be opening for the lender, which the listing agent does anyway. You're gonna be opening for the termite company. So there is some additional work, and there's also additional work making darn sure you're keeping everybody on track. So whatever you think that's worth, or you should ask for, you can put that here if you so desire. And that's for unrepresented buyer only. It's not to cover another agent. It's not, oh, I got that, so now I can, you know, it's strictly for an unrepresented buyer, okay?
just see the part where it says the broker who presents both buyer and seller, buyer's side compensation shall be specified in a separate written agreement?
Yes,
Which agreement?
SPBB,
Oh,
I'll show you. So continuation of right, for compensation for broker identified prospective buyers. So if this is, if you want to do 60 or however many days, you need to put the calendar days in here that you're protected for your commission. Okay, so you put the days here, but that's not all you need to do. We will look at 4D too, because you're gonna need to submit a list to the seller on an, I think it's an NBIP or something, but I'll pull that form up. I used to put a long time.
Yeah,
I put
Go
6
ahead.
months. But it depends on the length of your listing probably. and your seller, because some sellers are gonna really clue in on that. And, we've had that where they said, no, that's too long, so just back it off, but you could probably put 90, 120, right, Peter? 90, 120 days, whatever you think you're comfortable with and that your seller, is comfortable with.
It's usually 90 days, right?
Yeah.
It's whatever you want.
Yeah, I used to be greedy and put a lot in there.
Even though sometimes it'll be like, that's too much.
Yeah. Yeah. And if the seller has an obligation to pay other brokers, let's say, this listing had expired once or whatever the case may be, it not just expired, but they have an obligation to pay previous brokers. They need to list that broker, and what the property address is. So that if that particular, broker comes through, then it's excluded. So make sure that you ask them if there's any obligation. This isn't new, by the way. This has always been in our agreements. It just wasn't up top. Okay, so that's not new. So items included, to be included and excluded. Make sure you're talking to them, like, because most of the attached items are gonna be left with the property, right? But maybe they have a $30,000 or $40,000 chandelier that they're like, you need to know those things up front and make sure that you put that in your disclosure. If you know that, I would have all my disclosures prepared, come over here, and I would do that quickly on my disclosure, even if I'm not getting it signed at that moment, but at least I know it's in. So if you know they're excluding that, $30,000, $40,000 chandelier or that fountain in the front yard that doesn't look movable, that's movable, I've had scraps about potted plants on a porch because the pots were extremely expensive, even though they're movable. So make sure you know what they want to exclude. There may be an inserted air conditioner in a window. I've had those taken out, but I knew about it, so I already had covered that. So make sure you know if they want to remove something.
If you don't have enough room to list everything, what room can you use to continue?
Yeah, see attached addendum.
Yeah.
Just an addendum or a white sheet, but cross-reference it. Yeah,
What if somebody bought one of those real expensive jacuzzis, those long specific ones, above ground? And they want to take it.
it's
Same thing.
movable, but you have to exclude it.
Yeah, exclude it, yeah.
Because somebody's really staring at that, like they do with the fountains. Remember, people have had
Yeah.
fights over water fountains that are movable.
So would it be safe to say in an open house, hey, this is beautiful and all that, jacuzzi not included? Or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to exclude it.
Yeah, because it's not part of the price, and whatever you're excluding, they may want to know because they may want to think about what they're offering. Okay.
Especially also the statues.
Yeah.
Yes.
Statues has.
Oh, yeah.
The pillars
The
and all
thing
that
is,
stuff,
it's fixed on the ground, but they are not, And the buyer, the seller expected to take them away, when the process goes, and the buyer think otherwise, so.
And
There's a
curtains,
big dispute one time with, with the Pirelli, remember?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, I do.
Two statues worth about, $80,000.
Wow,
Yeah, it's very expensive statue.
wow.
And he thought that, well, it's, fixed to the ground, so it should be included in the purchase price, but the sellers, no, I said, this is a very special statue to me, so I have to take it away.
But that was all in the beginning, right? So he already knew, right? Or?
No.
No.
At the close. Yeah.
So that was closed, and then they have a big dispute.
Oh.
They have to, they thought they had to.
Michelle, 32 people aren't hearing what's going on.
Okay, so Peter's saying that, there's statues that some houses have placed in yards and they're movable, but people think they're gonna stay or they don't realize they're movable. Any special item, you should be walking around with the seller and making sure what's gonna be left. Camilla mentioned curtains. I had an incident, curtains in the things that are hanging on the windows are supposed to stay. I actually had a seller take these beautiful curtains down and the buyer's like, where's my curtains? So luckily we were not closed. So I said, hey, bring those curtains back. Oh, but we paid a lot, but you didn't exclude them. We asked you. So anything, even if it says, you know, that section 9 in the purchase agreement says what's included and excluded in a sale on the RPA, please be reading that. Take that with you on a clipboard, go through the property with your seller, make sure that you understand what they want to take. I did have drapes taken out of 2 properties. The second one I had to pay for because they were not going to budge and put those back. So, you know, you have to make sure that you're directing them properly. You wouldn't think, you know, non-fancy drapes, they would take the things they were hanging on, the rods and the drapes, but that cost me about $400. So make sure that you're prepping your seller. Hey, you need to leave the rods, the curtains, unless you want me to exclude them up front. Anything that's going to be excluded, chandeliers, statues, water fountains, jacuzzi tubs, make sure that you understand. And that brings me to leased items. Make sure you are asking if there's leased. We had a property right now that had some kind of and it wasn't a big deal because we're in escrow and we disclosed it, but they had some kind of a old water, make the water nice to drink type of system from Sparklets. I didn't know that, but it was okay because we picked it up in our disclosures, right? Because I said, where's the invoice for that? Are you paying that? And then they're like, oh, we don't own that. So it was fine because we're picking it up in the disclosures, but I would have rather known up top. So, but it was no problem. Make sure you're saying, do you have any water softener, anything like that? You need to be asking, oh, it has water softener here. Or those things that make the water drinkable. I don't know what it's called. Purifiers, yeah.
Purifiers, yeah.
And then we have a new town with solar panels too.
Oh,
Solar panels,
yeah.
yeah, are a big, I lost a deal over solar panels.
Lean on the property.
Yeah. So make sure, and it says here, if they know if they're leaned, make sure they're checked here, okay? So, maybe they have and why are windows and doors here? Maybe they replaced all the windows and they had to take a loan, you know, so you need to know those things. And that's just a quick interview. I recommend you just go over there and walk the property with them. And you can even do it, you know, at the same time you're taking the listing, but get the listing signed first and then you can add these things while you're talking, okay? So, property will be marketed in the following MLS. Don't miss this section. Most of us are CRMLS. So you want to type that here. And then there's a box here that I can't see a seller not wanting, but some of them are very private. So you need to make sure they understand that if you take photographs, you know, it required by the MLS, if they don't want you to, then you have to check the box. Okay?
That's if I tell you, please don't take a picture of my property.
Right,
Right.
because they're some people are that private. They do not want, maybe they'll let you take the outside and the backyard, but they don't want any interior shots. So you need to make sure, hey, I'm gonna have a photographer come over. Are we okay taking pictures? You know, so you need to ask them out of respect because there are some people super private. They don't want you. I had a photographer in a house recently and she's like, I don't want you taking pictures of my towels. I mean, she literally didn't want any of that. So we have to be mindful. The seller instructs the broker to present offers as received or as soon as possible. So, or if you're gonna have a date, like you have a hot property, you wanna field a bunch of offers, you would put a date here. Or days after, or you can check how many days after the property that you'll be presenting the offer. Okay, so you either fix a date or days after it's been on the MLS, or you present the offers as soon as received or as soon as possible. Now, here's what we were talking about off camera about the love letters, they call them. or buyer letters. So right here, the seller instructs buyers not to present buyer letters, or you can check that the seller instructs brokers to present these letters. Okay? So if a seller requests or relies on a buyer letter, then they are acting against the broker's advice. So, the reason why I think, Peter, is because fair housing or things like that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, fair housing concerns.
cross advertisement and.
Yeah.
things like that.
Favors and taking favors
Yeah.
over other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is something you need to be aware of. It automatically defaults not to present the letters. So if an offer comes in and I asked a seller, because I had, I don't know, just too many offers. And I said, some of them came in with the buyer letter. I got it in writing via email. Did you want these letters or may I exclude them? No, I want them. Okay, so I had written communication that he want them. So, okay, so even if you didn't check the box of the seller instructs the broker, if they later want it, make sure you're covering yourself in writing that they asked you to present those. Okay,
Is there any way that you can go back and check? Or do you have to just,
you could probably check the box, but they're gonna have to initial that box and date it. Yeah,
And Michelle, for you, I'm talking about letters that people write about, oh, I love your house and this and that.
and they got a family picture with the dog and, yeah, he's asking, what do the letters specifically say? It can say a multitude of things. And a lot of times it's gonna include a family picture. So it's just fair housing concerns. So investigative reports, it already checks the natural hazard disclosure because that is required for us to provide. So the seller shall order and pay for any reports selected within 5 days of the beginning of this agreement. Anyway, it's good to have the natural hazard report right away because you will know if it's in a high or the fire zones. Those are important to look at. Okay, so that's pre-checked. You can check anything you feel is necessary. A lot of this will come through on the offers and it'll say who's paying.
What about this thing about they're gonna pay within 5 days? Well, we don't even know if it's going to close, and NHD, we don't know.
NHDs, yeah, they wouldn't really be paying because even if you order them at the top of your listing, the NHD companies will not charge you unless you close. So it's not gonna cost them and you can explain that to them. But I think that for me, I think it is so important to have an NHD up front because you can order the one with the additional, environmental. And I think it's $20 more. With some companies, it's not much more. I recommend getting the whole thing.
So if a seller balks at saying, I'm not gonna pay within 5 days if I don't know if I'm in escrow, how come there's not an option to say, or within escrow?
I don't know. You could,
Well, if you order the report, you're supposed to pay for it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's 5 days or 15 days, but usually you pay as soon as possible. Unless like the NHD reports, then you don't have to pay it, up until after the close of escrow. Yeah, so for the other report, like the termite report,
homeowners.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
the general property.
Yeah.
inspection, you have to pay for those,
Yes.
after they've done the
Yes.
work, yeah.
Okay.
So she's asking, why is there not an option that on this form where it says that you pay later? Well, there are some forms like the homeowners association documents, which we always recommend you get up top, that they're gonna have to prepay. I mean, we can't wait because homeowners associations are not on your contingency timelines. So you need to get those as soon as possible. The preliminary title report too, you can have it up front because one of our agents didn't realize, and I've had this happen many times, that there's old CCNRs laid into those prelims. So you want to know as a listing agent ahead of time. Some of them, like around in Arcadia, I've seen their 1933 You know, there's some really old CCNRs, but there's some in the 80s too. So you want to make sure that you are checking the prelim. When I was a new agent, I thought, oh, nice, I don't have to do nothing. No, you need to be clicking the links. All of those hyperlinks, click them and grab those underlining documents. And then you call the title officer. It doesn't cost you anything. It's, you know, a couple minutes. Say, is there anything I should be looking for? I don't notice on this prelim. You start asking the title officer to review that prelim with you right away. But click those blue hyperlinks, because when I was a brand new agent over 20 years ago, I did not do that because I didn't know. So please, yeah. So exceptions to ownership and title, there should not be. I don't know what that case would be, but they have a paragraph in this listing agreement addressing them. If there is a contingency to purchase a replacement property, please make sure you don't forget to check the box. Seller opts out. This is another one I had to do a double take on. So if you check the box, then you're opting out of the sign or the lockbox. So you're probably going to leave those unchecked. So at first I checked the box and then I went, wait, what am I doing when I'm playing with the forms, learning them? So if you check these, you're opting out. So you're probably not going to be checking these unless the seller has a specific requirement. So you can ask. Some sellers may.
It's saying no lockbox and no sign.
Right.
Okay.
And some sellers may not want a lockbox. There's, so you need to have that conversation. The BCA, the Broker's Compensation Advisory, will always attach to this offer. This listing agreement. I recommend that you read the 7 pages. I read them again this morning. The main thing is to understand that grid section. If something is a question mark, the grid provides the paragraph you should be reading against that particular grid item. Are there any questions on this?
You go to like example F2, and then right next to it says Broker's Owner's Guide C7.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So make sure you're reading those paragraphs next to that. I've already read this 2 or 3 times, but I'm probably going to be reading it 10 times just because every time you reread something or you look at it, you're going to pick up something new. I do every day. Oh, that's what that means. So make sure you're reading these. The other thing is, this is the conclusion of our training, but I do want to show you that form, the NPBI. If you are notifying a buyer or a seller of properties that you were involved with, that you had broker involvement, meaning, and I didn't put this in the package, we went over it another training, but I just want to make sure that you know that if you have that continuation period on a contract, a week before that contract expires, be it a listing or a buyer's agreement, if you have broker involved properties that you want to reserve, make sure you're filling this form out, because if you don't, and they buy that property 5 days later, you would feel bad. You want to cover yourself. Okay. So are there any other questions?
What the part where you see that you block out that area, or what form is that?
Which,
SP.
oh, so, let me pull up. So Oscar is asking, where do you check the box on the offer? Because once you check the box for commission on the RPA, then it is going to populate that form for you. I didn't have the RPA in here. Let me pull it. Okay, so now I've pulled into the RPA, and I'm going to show you, just so we all remember, where we're checking the box to get paid by the seller as a buyer's agent. Or if you're dueling and you're writing an offer, make sure that you have a buyer's agreement and you do check this box as well. So this is the offer. I'm going to scroll really quick to the section. It is, yes, it's G3. right here, I'm gonna check this box that seller agrees to pay the obligation of the buyer to compensate the broker. And then it should have attached. So let me come down to the SPBB. Sorry, I hope I'm not making anybody sick with my scrolling. I just want to make sure it attached wire fraud. Okay, yes. So once you click the box, it's going to attach. This is where you ask for your commission to be paid by the seller. This is the form that the seller can accept, reject, or negotiate. Okay. So fill this out properly up here. And it's a very quick form. Number 1A, seller agrees to pay the broker whatever percent that you asked for on your buyer's agreement. You cannot ask for more because they can verify that. Or if it's a flat fee, you would put that here. So it's a very simple form. This is how long it is. It's quick. It's easy to fill out. Just make sure you're doing it. Don't forget to check that box like the offer I saw a couple of days ago where they forgot. Okay. But the agent was still going to cover them. So the seller, I mean, but make sure that we don't forget because these are little tiny check boxes. And just remember, if you have to stick a note on your computer, SPBB, do that. Just make sure that you remember because this is new to us. So are there any questions in Zoom? I'm going to look at the box. Okay, so 3 properties per form. Yes, on that shorter buyer agreement, it's 3 properties per form. And she's saying, what if I had 9 properties? Well, first you're going to start out with the 3 properties. And then if you have 9, I guess you would do additional forms. Okay. So I'm sorry you couldn't hear all the questions. Thank you. So we have another Thursday training.
Michelle, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Dorothy Lee. Yeah, just one question regarding the commission. So if we sign with the buyer, either 2.5 or 2%, but if seller pay 3% or there's a discrepancies, what can we do? So, what's your suggestion on the buyer broker, a commission agreement?
If the buyer only agrees to 2.5%, you cannot ask the seller to pay 3%.
Yeah, that's my question. In case seller willing to pay 3% if the price is good, but the buyer will only sign 2.5, then will we lose that 0.5%?
Then you have to talk to the buyer again and say that, hey, good news. The seller is willing to pay you 3% and 2.5%. So let's redo the BRBC.
Oh, we have to reduce that.
Yes. It's fine, it's no problem. But you cannot keep it as a secret and say, okay, I have a make a point agreement with this buyer at 2.5, and then the seller gave me 3%. I kept it as a secret. No, you cannot do that. You have to be transparent.
Yeah, and it's if you're going out as a habit and asking for 3% when you only had a BRBC for 2.5, that's a whole different story than what Peter's talking about. You're saying that the seller wants to give you a little bonus because the offer's so good. Okay, that could be worked out, but don't make a habit and don't do it according to CAR of just asking for more when you didn't put it on your BRBC.
Yeah, and then also you have to let the buyer
Yeah.
know because.
But bonuses are different, I would think, right? That could be worked out.
Yeah, it can be,
Yeah,
so
bonuses
that the
could be
buyer
worked
will
out.
mind,
Oh, okay.
Michelle,
Okay.
Michelle, hi, this is
Hi.
Sylvia. Okay, so on Dorothy's question, the forms can be filled out for the 3 instead of and then ask for the 3. And if
Yes.
it's 250, then 250. Otherwise, she has to go and amend. It's better to be proactive and send it first. And if they give it to you, yes. And if not, then go for the 250,
Right, because it's an easy counter for the listing agent. It's very easy to counter those forms. So yes, Sylvia, ask for 3 if that's what you you know, your value proposition is and ask for the 3%, and then you can submit the SPBB with 3%. I think Dorothy means, what if the seller thinks your offer was so wonderful that they want to give you extra
Oh,
money?
okay.
Peter said, yes, that could be worked out, but you have to be very transparent with everybody involved.
Yes. Oh, okay, okay, got it. Thanks.
Any
Yep,
other
be-
questions?
Because I heard another agent that acquaintance, she told me that their broker encouraged them sign 3% with the buyer.
Yeah,
So
yeah, go
I think-
ahead. If
I
the
know,
buyer's
but
willing,
most of the buyer prefer signing low percentage. They create problems, you know. Usually buyer prefer to sign you 2% or not more than 2.5. So there's a problem. Yeah, so anyway,
yeah,
I
it depends on the client. Yeah.
it depends on the client. Okay.
Hi, Michelle, Jennifer, I have a question. How, as a buyer agent, how we gonna know the seller gave the buyer's broker percent? Should we ask the listing agents, or how we gonna know? If they already give, like to give the buyer broker 3%, so when we're writing the offer, maybe we can tell our buyer, you don't need to pay anything. Can we do that, or how? Where only knows seller gave buyer commissions after they accept our offers, then we know. How we gonna know?
Again, it is, the word that is transparency. You have, everybody has to know, in this case, that's the law right now.
Are you meaning, how would you know ahead of time?
Yes. Yes, uh-huh.
Oh, well, you
don't-
can
don't
call
know
and
ahead of
ask.
time.
I mean,
After, it's always negotiable, right?
right,
And during the negotiating process, you should keep everybody informed.
yeah. And the thing is, remember, even if somebody verbally says to you, hey, yeah, 3%, no problem. That's, you know, if it's not signed by the seller and it's not in the contract, you know, so you just have to swing the bat and go for it, you know, try to, you know, put that in and get it, because you can ask the agent, but remember, if it's not written in the contract, you know, then the seller didn't sign it. So in commercial, we go back and forth and ask.
Can we ask?
Remember.
Can we ask a listing agent to send out the seller signing the paper for the buyer broker before we submit an offer? Because since this is a percentage, the buyer broker compensation is not MLS, so how are we gonna to know until we have to see the paper, right? But is it by law they have to send us this BRBC?
So the BLBC, you don't have to show the buyer seller unless the seller requested,
Yes.
okay?
Mhm.
But the thing is that you have a fiduciary duty to keep everything transparent.
So if I'm a listing agent, I'm always gonna tell, if I'm working on the behalf of the seller, right?
Yes.
I'm always gonna tell them, submit. That's my term, submit.
Yeah, so Camilla said if she's working on behalf of the seller, she's going to say, yeah, go ahead and submit. Now, when we get asked this, because it goes on daily in commercial, and we just say, yes, there is commission available per the landlord. Right, you know, and they usually write it in an LOI, which is different from residential, but ahead of that, they've already been calling. But I just want to remind you, I say that out of my mouth. It's not so until it's written in the contract. So you really just got to, you know, take a swing, put it in, and do your best.
And you don't wanna annoy the listing agent by asking upfront, just submit all your terms.
Right, and the offers we got recently, those guys never said anything. They just submitted and they had a really good offer. And it was like, cool. And they just submitted the form and, you know, and asked for the seller to pay, which they did. So you just have to give it a shot. I know, Peter, don't you think it's gonna just kind of even out, or
Eventually.
eventually, yeah. So listing agents, we can help by explaining to the seller why it may be advantageous to them to offer. and let them make their own mind up. We can't push them to offer a commission for the buyer's agent, but we can give them a point of view and let them think about it themselves. We do not want to be pushing them in, but just give them your point of view of why it may be advantageous for them. But yes, you can ask the other agent, but it's not valid until, you're on contract and everything's been signed. Yeah. Anything else?
Oh, I have another question, but for the first form, like a buyer's non-exclusive short-term or long-term agreement. So some buyer, like open house, they put the not legal name. Some people, they put an English name and the last name. So in that situation, that name is gonna be is valid, or we have to check their driver's license, because later on they put the legal name, but the one that open house or sign the buyer's representation, that form, they put the maybe there's not name, their cousin name or somebody else, but not the person, this real buyer. So
Fake name.
Or Mickey Mouse? Yeah.
Fake name.
Yeah.
The legal name. Then you can say AKA,
Yeah.
Also known as.
Also known as the name, but if they put somebody else, the name totally different from his, then that's fraud.
Yeah, and I don't think that you could be saying, can I see your driver's license? I probably would not do that at an open house. If they sign, they sign.
I wanna say that as long as they put something.
Yeah,
They acknowledge,
it's
whether,
kind of a
whether
general
it's
agreement.
false or true.
You don't have the duty to
Yeah,
investigate.
we don't have the duty to investigate, and plus we don't have the time.
and we're not
That's right.
on a case for the cops,
Yeah,
so.
no, this is just an acknowledgement that you saw this and we explained to you briefly what it is, and you can even put your X.
Right, I've seen that.
And make sure to give them a copy of what they signed.
Give them a copy of this form. That's why when you're out at open house, give them a copy of the form, okay?
Would there be like a
Blank.
blank copy or something?
You can give them a blank. So you're gonna have a bunch of blanks and you just give them a copy of a blank, okay?
Or once they sign, okay.
After they've signed your sign in. Is there any other questions? So we'll be here next Thursday for open forum. We will be scheduling, probably some role play, one day after, the training, on Friday. If you agents want to role play and we can film you, you can share it with Zoom, but, I'll leave that up to you. I know there's a couple that are willing to do it and have asked for that. Role playing, getting the buyer's agreement signed, explaining the listing agreement to the seller, okay?
So Michelle, how far along are we with that?
We're done.
You're all done?
Yeah,
Okay. So
now
next-
we've concluded. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but we'll keep going and maybe we'll go over the RPA. We'll just keep doing our normal contracts training. And, so that we're all keeping up, because for me, I need to review everything every day so that I make sure before I walk out, I've learned something new.
Yeah.
And role playing, I would learn something new, because I think I would learn from anybody that's willing to come up and role play. I love that idea. So thank you for that,
Michelle,
Henry,
I'm
that
sorry.
brought that up.
Quick question. Are you gonna have day number 2 for the tech day like you did on Tuesday? I didn't get a chance to attend for the class that was live this past Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday.
That wasn't live. That was building a website.
Oh, but you didn't have it recorded.
No, that
So are
was,
you-
that was
are you-
bring your laptop and get help to build your own website.
Do you have another class like that one again, or not at all?
Not right now, but we
Uh-huh.
could look at it later.
Okie
Yeah.
dokie. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I see that.
Does that? the 18th?
Yeah, we do.
And they help with all that?
So I just wanted to say thank you, Coldwell Banker, George Realty. I know your time is valuable. I'm always honored to share my time with you as well. I appreciate each and every one of you. And to our success, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the great training. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
And they help promote